everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I am Monica Carey. I am the Pennsylvania Program Director for Solar United Neighbors. And we are actually, I think, just going to go ahead and get started now. It's 6:31, so thank you all for joining. If you would like to, please go ahead and in the chat, introduce yourself, say where you're coming from. It would be great to get to know you a little bit, as well as you getting to know us. So I am based out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and you may know Rachel Pacharka. You may have seen her either at events or emails from her. She is my counterpart out in Pittsburgh. But then we also have two other Sun representees here. So Chris, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself first, and then Adrian.
Hey, thanks, Monica. My name's Chris Tilden. I was up until a couple of weeks ago, a resident of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I help out Sun in a couple of different states, but Pennsylvania is one of them. So I'll be here in the background, taking a peek at the chat, answering any questions that I can in there, and helping Monica um, know what's going on in there. She will probably take a couple of breaks throughout this presentation, and if there's anything that I can answer, I will ask her to weigh in. And yeah, that's it. Say hi in the chat, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah. My name is Adrian. I also work with Chris in a few of the different Sun states in the Heartland region. I'm based just outside Philadelphia, so also a Pennsylvania resident, and I'll also be answering questions in the chat tonight.
Thanks, Chris and Adrian. And then we are also really lucky to have Will join us tonight. So Will is from Green Rack Solar, the installer for Switch Together. So Will, if you want to say hi to everybody.
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Will. Happy to be here. Looking forward to answering some questions and sharing more about Green Rack.
Excellent. And yeah, so Will's going to speak a little bit more at length later on in the presentation. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. So this is what we call a Solar 101. It is for the Greater Pittsburgh Area Switch Together campaign. And I'll start off by introducing Solar United Neighbors. So we are a national nonprofit organization. And like I said, I'm based out of Pennsylvania. Rachel and I are really the boots on the ground here in the state. And Sun is a vendor neutral 501(c)(3) nonprofit. So we are not a sales company. We are not a solar installer. But what we do is really focus on education, advocacy, and these types of campaigns where people get to go solar. And we try to make sure that we really focus on consumer protections throughout the process. So Sun actually got started. This is our founder, Anya, over here. Back in 2007, she helped her neighborhood, and she was one of them, actually go solar in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood in Washington, D.C. That was about 50 homes that all decided to go solar at the same time in 2007. And they realized throughout the process that it was really great that they got to lean on each other for support and that they were able to get a good discount because there were so many of them going solar. So fast forward to today, and we now have members in all 50 states. We have run over 460 solar group buy programs like this one, and we have helped more than 11,000 people go solar through our programs. And in Pennsylvania, in Allegheny County specifically, we have run, this is our 6th solar program. We have helped 92 people go solar with over 700 kilowatts of installed capacity. If you're not sure what a kilowatt is, you will know by the end of this presentation. And we have helped nearly 900 people learn about solar. And that's just directly members of our programming. That is to say nothing of the people that, we meet at other events and through other programs. So really proud of the work that we've done. And Allegheny County has been kind of the core of our program since 2018. And I want to take a second to thank our partners for this campaign. So we have worked very closely with the City of Pittsburgh, Turtle Creek Valley Council of Governments, or COG, the Steel Rivers COG, and Connect. You may actually have heard about this presentation or this campaign through one of those partners. They have been really wonderful, and if you do end up going solar, you should definitely let them know and thank them for giving you the information. So today we're going to cover 3 different sections, and I'm going to actually stop at the end of each one to see if there are any questions. So you can go ahead and add your questions in the chat while I'm talking, and I'll answer them at the end of the section. And I think since there are so few of us, we can also help you come off mute if you want to ask your question verbally. But so the 3 sections are going to be how the Switch Together campaign works, the kind of nuts and bolts of solar technology, and then the questions around solar economics, which I know is something that everybody is wondering about. So first, what is Switch Together? So this is a group buy program for solar and battery storage, and it is able to be used by residents and small businesses that are in Allegheny County, as well as the 5 directly neighboring counties. So a group buy program has a lot of benefits. It helps to save consumers time and money. You get to go in together and you get that bulk purchase discount. But with these programs in particular, we're working with vetted installers who have really good product, have a great price. And then we're also going to be managing that relationship the entire time, as well as iChooser, who is our partner in this program. And we also get to work with these great local governments like the partners that I just shared with you. And we typically run about 2 campaigns per year per location. So if you find out that right now going solar is not in the cards for you, we will be back next year. Now the pricing is likely to change, but just so you know that there is going to be another opportunity in the future. And so again, some of those benefits of the Switch Together program is that good value on installation. So typically through these programs, we see that solar owners are able to save about 10 to 15% on a solar installation. You will get support all throughout the process, including after you've gone solar. So we at Sun, we have a free help desk. I'll share our contact information at the end, so you'll be able to reach out to us and let us know if you have any questions about the installation process, or if something happens in 2 years, you'll be able to come back to us and we'll help you figure out what's going on with your utility bill or whatever your question is. These are also vetted installers, so they undergo pretty rigorous financial vetting to make sure that they're not going to go out of business in the next year. So you can be sure that you're going to have support throughout the process and afterwards. And then, as I said, we have customer service for you through all the stages. And so I'm actually going to turn it over to Will now to talk a little bit about GreenRack Solar, and kind of share what you can expect when you sign up to join the Switch Together campaign.
Thanks, Monica. So, hello everybody again. My name is Will, for those of you that may have joined late. And I am Director of Sales with GreenRack, and I also work closely with our parent company, Civic Renewables, on managing SOPs and processes. So I'm a very process-oriented person, so I love to talk about process. I will share some kind of big picture context and history for GreenRack, and then we can get into sort of a process overview. So GreenRack was founded in 2019 by a gentleman by the name of Eben Needham, who I actually used to work with about a decade ago in the industry. And Eben has been installing solar for about that long, and we both worked for Solar City, which became a part of Tesla. He was one of the original trainers on the original Tesla Powerwall, which I know mixed feelings about the brand. And I won't get into any talk of that right now, but needless to say, our founder has a ton of experience in installing solar, and GreenRack actually started as a subcontractor for larger solar installers and sales groups in the country. So if you Google solar in Pennsylvania, you are likely to find a number of national outfits that don't necessarily have boots on the ground in local markets. And GreenRack started as a quality local installer, providing quality local installations to those national companies. And over time, the company grew and built out more and more capacity for doing their own turnkey work from start to finish, including the initial sales process. And so about a year and a half ago, GreenRack was acquired by a company called Civic Renewables, which is a parent company to local and regional solar contractors that supports those companies with procurement, HR, payroll, marketing, things that can be shared at scale and can help create a little bit more, or a lot more in some cases, resilience for these local contractors that don't necessarily have in some cases the cash flow or the systems to weather the storm. And there are a lot of ups and downs in this industry. So with that, GreenRack had the resources to really build out this sales team, and I was a part of that initiative. And so we have to date installed thousands of solar arrays in the greater Pittsburgh region. We also have an office in Columbus, and I think it's a safe assertion to say that we have installed the plurality of residential solar arrays in the greater Pittsburgh region. This opportunity to partner with Switch Together and Solar United Neighbors was a really exciting one. This is the first campaign that we have applied to, and we were thrilled to win the campaign locally. And so I hope that's a decent summary. I'll get into the process a little bit, and also if anybody has questions, either Monica or Adrian or Chris, feel free to call it out, and we can do kind of Russian style seminar where I can answer questions as we go. So don't hesitate to call them out. A little bit of process. So when you sign up to go solar with Switch Together, you will get a welcome email right off the bat. And shortly following that, you will get a subsequent welcome email from GreenRack, from one of my colleagues introducing themselves and sharing a booking link where you can schedule a virtual consultation. You can also, at that point, engage in an email exchange if you have questions immediately or things like that. During that consultation, we will share a design with you based on the data that you provided, as well as remote site assessment that we do using satellite imagery and LiDAR. We do a shading analysis. We estimate what your system can produce. We tell you what it will cost. We give you a whole cost and financial projection breakdown, and we answer any questions you may have. If you say, hey, this looks awesome, and we want to move forward, we will send you a contract. And I see a question in the chat. Slate roofs, while it is possible, it's not something that we do. And generally, if you want to do a slate roof, what I would say, you have two options. One is get a new roof, either standing seam or corrugated metal or composite shingle, which is generally the easiest. Or it can be possible, and we don't do this, but I have seen it done. You can replace the sections of the slate roof where footers would go and penetrations would be made with composite shingles and do that, but it is a custom kind of bespoke process. So things to consider, and happy to connect with you, William, after the call. If you'd like more info on that, I could share some links and resources for other companies that specialize in that stuff. So if you said, yes, we want to move forward, we would send you a contract. We've got about a 7-page contract you can read, review, includes all the details of the system, and we would schedule a site survey. So site surveyor comes out, measures the roof, gets any penetrations and layout of your roof, as well as shading, pictures, things like that, looks at your electrical system, makes sure that that can handle the solar, and if any upgrades are needed, we get that information clarified during that site survey. Once we get that site survey information, our engineering and design team builds an engineered plan set for your system, which we then review with you and share before we move forward to permitting. Once you say, looks good, we submit for building permits and interconnection with the utility, which for most of you guys is going to be Duquesne Light. We submit those applications and generally have to wait a little while for that stuff to be approved. And during this time, if you live in an HOA, we would deal with those filings if they're necessary. Once we're approved for permanent interconnection, we schedule our installation, which for us, usually on a residential system takes 1, maybe 2 days. Once the system is installed, it will be inspected by the municipality generally, as well as the utility, and we submit our final paperwork to get PTO, or permission to operate, from your utility company. And at that point, we can flip the switch and you start generating clean energy. Hope that is a not too overwhelming summary of the process. And again, here for questions if you guys have them.
That was perfect. Well, in the next section, I'm going to talk through a little bit of the solar technology. So I want you to feel free to kind of chime in with maybe more specifics about what folks who are part of the campaign might experience, or if there's anything else that you just want to add for context, please don't hesitate to unmute.
Cool.
Okay. All right. And so then the last thing I wanted to touch on was kind of the timeline for this campaign. So we did launch on August 20th. The deadline to sign up, so that's just to say that you're interested, that is going to be November 12th. And then our installation deadline is June 30th of next year. And then I have a note here, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later, but if you are signing up now, today or later, you will not be able to get a system installed by the end of 2025. The queue is just too long to make that happen, which means that you will not be able to take advantage of the 30% tax credit. That is unfortunately going away. However, GreenRack Solar has offered an additional incentive for folks who do have to sign a contract for installation starting in 2026. This is to help kind of mitigate concerns around the loss of that tax credit. So you will actually see additional savings on top of that 10 to 15% that you would already receive just by being part of the campaign. So I hope that helps alleviate some concerns, but I just want to be very clear and very forthright about the timing because a lot of things are changing right now. And so I do see one question. Okay, great. All right, so again, feel free to add questions all throughout. We're about to get into the really meaty part, so you will probably have questions, and if you do, somebody else does as well. So please do ask. So when we talk about solar, it's really a shorthand for solar photovoltaic or solar PV. That is the technology that takes sunlight and converts it into electricity. And In this case, what we're looking at is a solar panel or module. And so off to the left, you can kind of see the breakdown of layers. At the heart of it, what really matters the most are these solar cells, the blue squares right in here. So it is still predominantly silicon technology. They're doing that conversion of sunlight into electricity. And then everything else is there to protect those panels and make sure that they can exist outside in the elements for 25 years. When you string up a number of modules in a row, that is called a solar array. And when we're looking at solar on, for example, somebody's roof, sometimes you'll ask them how much solar do you have? And they'll tell you, I've got 12 panels. It's not the most useful metric, and that's because solar panels themselves are actually have different wattages, just the way that a light bulb does. So in this example over here on the right, we're looking at 12 modules that are each 400 watts. So altogether, this would be a 4,800 watt array, or a 4.8 kilowatt array. And then for reference, you see that man off to the left, and that's just so you kind of get an idea of scale. So the average solar module is going to be about 3.5 feet wide by 5.5 feet tall, about 40 pounds. So this whole array is approximately 250 square feet. And so we've kind of talked about kilowatts as being a system size. That's a good measure for size. In Pennsylvania, for reference, the average system size is going to be 4 to 15 kilowatts for a residential system. But you can really size that however you want based on how much space you have, what your energy offset goals are, and your budget as well. And then the last unit that is useful to think about is a kilowatt hour. So a kilowatt is a measure of power. It's instantaneous. If you extend that over time, that's your kilowatt hour, and that is your energy or your electricity production. So you've probably seen kilowatt hour on your electric bill. When the panels themselves are mounted onto your roof, there are a few different styles of racking depending on your roof type. So off on the left is kind of your standard composite shingle graded roof. So in this case, what we're looking at is the installer is going to drill a hole through your roof down to the rafters. That way, it's a really secure connection for those solar panels so that they're not going to, slide off. And then around that hole that they drill, they're going to add a silicone sealant as well as this kind of metal square that fits up under the shingle above it. And that is flashing to make sure that any water from, rain or snow actually shears away from that penetration point. That way you don't have any leaking into your home. If you have a standing seam metal roof, that's even better. And that's because those seams can actually be used to clamp the panels right to the roof so that you don't have any penetration and then you don't have to worry about leaks. When you're thinking about whether your home is suitable for solar, there are really 4 criteria. And when you sign up to join the Switch Together campaign, we're going to actually walk you through thinking about and evaluating these, or the installer is going to assess them separately. So the first is roof orientation. So we're in the Northern Hemisphere. You really want your roof to be facing south-ish. So due south is best, but it can really work anywhere from due east to due west. And then it is a solar panel, so you want to have as little shading as possible from nearby structures, trees, but the solar systems can handle an amount of shading. Third, you want to have enough contiguous space for the system. So the industry standard is about a 250 square foot minimum for panels. And you do want it to be contiguous because every time you insert some kind of separator, a divider, like a chimney, a dormer, a vent, that really introduces inefficiencies in the connection points between the panels. So 250 square feet contiguous, that's kind of your minimum. And then finally, you want a newish roof that's in good condition. So your asphalt or composite shingle roof, they're going to last about 30 years. So we do recommend that your roof be no older than about 10, maybe 15 years. That's really like as old as is a good idea. Otherwise, you would want to replace that roof before the solar goes on. If you have a metal roof, those last a lot longer. They're a 50-year lifetime, so you have much more wiggle room. And then if you decide that, rooftop is not right for you, if you don't have the space for it on your roof, but you do on the ground in your yard, then a ground-mounted system may be right for you. So in this case, there are some kind of advantages, disadvantages to ground-mounted solar relative to rooftop solar. So the primary disadvantage to ground-mounted solar is its cost. It is going to be more expensive than a rooftop system. And the reason for that is because you do need to build up steel scaffolding to hold the panels. And then often you're going to drive piles or pour concrete to actually hold that structure stable. You'll also have to do trenching to bury the power lines because you're going to have to carry the power from the panels back to the house, or in this case, a barn. And so all of those things are just added cost to the system. But there are some really nice advantages to a ground-mounted system that you can't get with rooftop. So the primary one being that you can situate your panels, orient them, angle them, however best absorbs sunlight throughout the day. You are not limited to the pitch and orientation of your roof. The other really great thing about it is that there's all this airflow around these panels, which actually cools them down and makes them work more efficiently than when they're kind of flush to your roof. So again, definitely pros and cons. It will really come down to your budget and your preferences. The next component along the line of generating solar is an inverter. So your solar panels are going to be absorbing sunlight, and they actually generate what's called direct current, or DC, and your home is going to use alternating current, or AC. So you need an inverter to actually switch that power so that it's running from DC to AC so you can use it in your home. The inverters are doing a few other jobs as well. So it is kind of the computerized brain of your system. It is constantly calculating and adjusting to maximize the output of power from your panels. And then there's also the ability to connect to the internet, which allows you to monitor the production of power throughout the day. So this is really nice if you're having a cloudy day, you can actually watch the power kind of dip and rise again. And I have up here 3 different types of inverters. Essentially, the 2 on the left are going to be for rooftop systems, and the one on the right is for a ground-mounted system. And I'm not going to go super into detail. It's not really that important. It all works out in the end. If you do have questions, I'm happy to answer them, but it can get pretty in the weeds pretty quickly. But the one thing I do want to mention is that if you are thinking about potentially adding panels later on, you want to add 12 now, but you're thinking maybe in a couple years I'll have the money to add another 8. Or if you're thinking about adding battery backup later, then we recommend that you tell the installer now, because the inverters come in different sizes, and oftentimes your installer is going to size your inverter based on the size system you have right now. If you don't tell them, I'm thinking about adding more later, then you'll either need to size up your inverter later or add a second inverter, and that's just additional cost. So once the energy flows from the panels, switches to alternating current in the inverter, it then feeds into your electrical panel, the service panel that you have likely in your basement or garage. So it is a simple connection in that panel, and most homes, especially if it's a newer home, really doesn't need upgrades before going solar. But if you do have a small service panel or you have an older home, you may need to add a sub panel or do an upgrade to that. All right, so we're going to put it all together because it's a lot of different components. So first, you have your solar panels. They are absorbing sunlight, converting it into electricity. That then is a DC, direct current. It gets converted in your inverter into AC. It feeds into the general energy mix in your electrical panel. And then that goes in and powers anything in your home that is running. And then it goes to your utility meter. Now, once you go solar, you're actually going to have your utility meter replaced, and it's now going to be bi-directional. So it will read energy coming from the grid as well as energy from your home going out to the grid. So you can see that this is still a grid-tied home. You're not going to be off-grid just because you go solar. And we do think that this is the most, both the most common and the most cost-effective way of going solar. It's important at this time to kind of introduce the concept of net metering. So I'm actually going to come back here and talk about it for a second. So net metering is an accounting mechanism that your utility uses to make sure that you are being credited for all of the electricity that you're sending from your home to the grid. So if you imagine a summer day, there's plenty of sunshine, and during the day, maybe you're generating more electricity than your home is actually using. In that case, you are actually going to be sending power, or you're going to be sending electricity from your home through that bidirectional meter out to the grid. And that energy is going to go likely to your neighbors, and your utility is going to sell it to them at full retail rate. So what the utility does is for all of those electrons that you send out to the grid, they're going to credit you for that electricity. So you will actually get a credit on your monthly electric bill. You're going to see it listed as your net metering bank or a kilowatt hour bank. And every month you will accumulate the excess kilowatt hours that you did not spend in your own home. They'll go into that bank, you'll be credited for them. So in the summer, you're building up your bank. And then in the winter, when it is darker, there's more cloud cover, we're just not seeing as much sunlight, you'll actually be spending down your bank. And those kilowatt hours are credited 1-to-1 for full retail rate. And that is really incredible. It's a really great policy in Pennsylvania. And it kind of tells you that the utility thinks that the electricity that you're generating from solar is of equal value to the electricity that they are selling you. So another way to kind of visualize net metering is through, this is consumption monitoring software, which we do recommend that you get. It's a really great way to understand what's going on inside your house and with your system. So in this case, in blue is the actual solar generation throughout the course of the day. So you can see when the sun comes up, right here, and when it goes down. And for this first part of the day, this homeowner is generating much more than they're actually using in their own home. So all of this is being exported to the grid. Then they seem to come home around, 1:30 and start turning things on. And now their home is actually being powered directly by that solar energy. And then in the evening, when the sun's gone down and, they're running the dishwasher, watching TV, all of that is energy coming from the grid. So all of this gets kind of tabulated. You figure out how much are you net exporting, are you net importing, and then that is the kilowatt hour that is going to actually show up on your electric bill. So this is how you will see your net metering every month. So this is a Penelec customer's bill. Will be similar to any West Penn Power customers that we have. So this was for September or August to September is this billing month. And so you can see they have this net meter banked usage section on their bill. They came into the month with 1,695 kilowatt hours. Over the course of the month, they sent from their home to the grid 985 kilowatt hours, and then they took from the grid 785 kilowatt hours. So between those two, you can see that they net exported this month. They generated 200 kilowatt hours more than they used. And so those 200 kilowatt hours get added to their bank, and you can see that their final banked number is this 1,895 kilowatt hours. So then this is great because they're building up that bank, and then come the winter, they can start spending it down. So then down here, you can see the service charges. So the net metering credit, again, this is the rate. This was that full retail rate. They're getting that for the total cost of how much they imported on the month. And so since they were net exporters, they actually cancel out $142 worth of charges. And that is, again, more than they actually imported. So they are left with just this customer charge, that fixed customer charge you will still have to pay every month. It tends to be between $10 and $25 per month. And so when we talk about solar paying for itself or paying itself off, this is what we're talking about. Now, a couple of things to note about net metering. It is only offered by investor-owned utilities. They are required by Pennsylvania law to offer full retail rate net metering. So an investor-owned utility, that's going to be Duquesne Light, it's going to be West Penn Power, if you have one of those major utilities. If, however, you are part of a rural electric cooperative or a municipal utility, they do not have to credit you and your solar at full retail rate. So I would recommend checking your guiding documents. Get in touch with us if you have any questions about it. And then the other thing I forgot to mention, for people who are on DLC or West Penn Power, you do need to be on the default service plan. If you are purchasing your power through PA Power Switch, that means you do not have to get the full retail rate net metering. So if you want it, it's really good. Make sure that you're on your default service plan. All right, and then just want to talk very quickly about some things that you can get with solar. So primarily we're going to be talking about batteries here. There is a misconception with solar that if there is a power outage in your neighborhood, even if you have, if you have solar, that you think you won't lose power. And that is not true because of safety, really, for electrical workers. So if there is an outage in your neighborhood, if your system is backfeeding power onto the lines, anybody who comes out to work on them is at risk of electrocution. So your system will actually shut off along with all of the homes that are in your neighborhood. So if you want battery backup to make sure that you do have power during an outage, then battery would be right for you, but with the caveat that, battery is still very expensive, and It's really only worth it if you have frequent outages, very long outages, or if you have critical equipment that has to be powered during an outage. So specifically thinking about medical equipment, or if you have something like a well pump or other equipment that it needs to be running. And we do know that there are some folks who are thinking about emergency or disaster preparedness, just as we have more and more storms, like winter storms from this past year. It might be something that you start thinking about more and more, especially as the cost of battery, it is coming down. It's just coming down slowly. Okay, and then I think this is my last slide before I pause for questions. So I see a couple in there, but please do feel free to add more. So when you go solar, there are 3 different types of warranties that are going to come with your system. So the first is going to be a manufacturer's warranty. This is going to be for each of the physical components that actually go as part of the system. So the panels themselves will have typically a 25-year warranty from the manufacturer. The racking is going to have its own warranty. The inverters have their own warranty. Second is going to be a workmanship warranty or a labor warranty. And this one comes directly from the installer. So it is their way of guaranteeing their work against any damage or roof penetrations or leaks in your home. So that is, well, that varies widely from installer to installer. I've seen anything from 1 year to 25 years. So it kind of depends. And then the third type of warranty is going to be specific to the solar panels themselves. It again comes from the manufacturer, and this is called a power production warranty. It essentially tells you that, the panels are going to have their highest efficiency day 1, and then it will be decreasing efficiency over time. But they're guaranteeing you that they're not going to lose more than a certain expected amount of efficiency. So they'll tell you, expect it to decrease in efficiency by 1% every year for 25 years. And honestly, that's a really big number. So it's not going to be that, but it's that kind of power production guarantee. The second question we get regularly is, what happens with my homeowner's insurance? Will my premium go up or down? So when you add solar, it actually adds value to your house, and the value of your house goes into that calculation of what your insurance premium is going to be. So, we have seen that premium go up for solar. And that's not unexpected, but it's also not a huge amount. I would say less than 5% increase, and likely less than that. But then there are some insurers who have sustainability goals that may actually incentivize you to go solar and decrease your premium. So just if you're seeing a big change, a big increase in your insurance, we would recommend that you shop around. And then one of the selling points of solar is that it is very low maintenance. There are no moving parts. It's at an angle, and with the rain and snow, it's almost self-cleaning. So you really don't have to worry too much about that. We do recommend that after about 5 years, you have somebody come out and check out your system, make sure that everything's working. But again, through your inverter, you'll be able to monitor your energy production. And so you'll know pretty quickly if something's going wrong with your system. But if you are looking for maintenance, we would recommend getting in touch with your installer because they can make a recommendation for who to talk to for maintenance. And then solar systems last 25 years, and they don't just stop working at the end of 25 years. You can really have them running for as long as makes sense to you. What I will say then is that it's a 25-year investment for your home. And that means that if you are looking to move soon, it may not be the right time for you to go solar. But as I said before, solar does add value to your house. So you may be able to recoup some of that investment when you sell. And then if you are in a homeowners association or a historic district, you will likely need additional either permits or some kind of application for approval by the association. And so you'll basically just want to let the installers know that that's where you live and that there are going to be these extra barriers to you getting solar, and they'll be able to work through those with you. Okay, so I just talked for a very long time, so I'm gonna actually pause and see if Will has anything else to add, and then we can answer some questions.
Nothing immediate. That was great, Monica. Thanks. And yeah, happy to get into any and all questions you guys might have or go even greater depths of what you've talked about.
Yeah, well, so do you want to maybe answer Carol's question?
Let me see. Yeah, sure. So, as this is a good one and a common one, and Monica, I think touched on this, but I'll reiterate and perhaps add a little bit of context. Um, as Monica mentioned, uh, well, let me start with this. The basic answer to the question is no, not necessarily. Most grid-tied solar arrays in this region um, actually do not have a battery. One of the reasons for that is because the net metering laws that Monica alluded to are some of the best in the country here in Pennsylvania, and they allow us to use the grid kind of like a giant battery. So the value proposition for a battery isn't really there from like a solar payback standpoint. That being said, for safety reasons, because we don't want to, and the utility companies will not allow us to backfeed the grid with electricity if the grid is down, when your inverter, which is like the brains of the system, senses or doesn't sense an electrical signal from the grid, it stops producing solar power. And once the grid comes back up, the inverter knows and it can produce solar power again. If you have a battery, that battery can serve as what we sometimes refer to as a virtual grid and allow the solar system to continue producing even when the grid is down, because that battery gives the power that's coming from the solar system somewhere to go. So if you don't have a battery and you don't have a generator, your system will not be producing during an outage. You will lose power just as you would without solar or without a battery. If you have a battery, or obviously if you have a generator with an automatic transfer switch, you don't notice when the power goes out. And you only know if your battery starts getting low and you get a notification on your phone saying, hey, battery's running low, your power might start going out soon. So I hope that answers the question. One of the most common misconceptions about solar's capabilities.
Yeah, that was great, Will.
Just to
Any,
hop in really quickly, I think Carol's specific question would be if a more traditional like fossil fuel powered generator would be available as part of this package deal.
Um, we don't have, I would say we haven't like built fossil fuel generators into our offerings for this program. Um, we might be able to make some general recommendations, but we don't currently, and we've like looked into it, but we don't currently install fossil fuel generators. My recommendation just right now, from a cost effectiveness standpoint, um, the cheapest option is probably a diesel or gas generator. But if you have regular outages, and reliability is important to you and you have natural gas service. I don't want to be an advocate for fossil fuels, but natural gas is probably your most reliable backup power source, even more so than a battery, because as long as those natural gas lines are pressurized, you will have power. And in the event of an extended outage, and if it's cloudy or if for some reason your solar isn't producing as much as you would be needing on a day-to-day basis over a long period of time, that natural gas generator will just keep running. So, hate to be an advocate for fossil fuels, but that is my pro tip on extended backup or frequent outage, addressing that reliably.
Well, and I do think that that actually gets to the fact that, you know, when we're talking about the grid, and this is maybe a bigger question than just for residences, but that reliability really comes from having a variety of energy sources. So I think that that's exactly what you were saying. Well, that was
Agreed.
perfect. Yeah. Okay. Well, in the interest of time, I'm going to move into the solar economics, which I'm sure is something that lots of you are interested in. So again, please drop your questions into the chat. But so when we're thinking about the cost of solar, it has come down dramatically, even just within the last decade. So since 2010, costs have dropped by 73%. And we're seeing that solar is not anymore a like specialty project. It is not just for the fancy, wealthy family in that one special neighborhood. It has a really great return on investment and is becoming more and more accessible to lots of different families of different incomes. So when we're thinking about how the Switch Together program is actually able to save you money, we want to think about this in terms of where the cost of solar is really coming from. And so this is kind of a figure of that breakdown of cost over the last 15 years. So in orange along the bottom, those are your system components or the physical components of solar. So the panels, the racking, the inverters, the wiring. And they are the biggest chunk of the cost. And then labor costs have kind of decreased until about 2016, 2017, and then stayed mainly flat. And then the last bit is your soft costs. And soft costs we've seen in some places can be as much as 50% or more of the cost of solar. But that is really, you know, so anything that's not labor and not the physical components, it is your permitting and application fees, interconnection costs. It is the, on the installer side, it is the sales and marketing and acquisition, customer acquisition. So when it comes to Switch Together, the installers know that they're going to be serving a lot of customers at once. They're able to bulk purchase materials, so that helps to reduce that cost of system components, drive this orange wedge down. But it also helps reduce soft costs because they can do less of that marketing because, you know, we're bringing this group of interested, educated solar or homeowners to them to go solar. So before I get into the specific costs of solar right now, it is really important to talk about the residential tax credit. Because as part of the federal budget that was passed over the summer, the 30% tax credit is going away. So it was a tax credit for solar and or battery installations. It is still available if you go solar or install that battery before the end of 2025. If your system is installed in 2026, you will not be eligible to use that tax credit. In the past, the tax credit was able to be rolled over year if you didn't have the appetite to take it all at once. Um, the tax guidance isn't out just yet, but we're pretty sure that because the tax credit has been eliminated, you will not be able to roll it over anymore. So whatever your tax appetite is, that's what you're going to be able to take. So I just want to be very clear about this. If you do have questions about it, if it's going to apply to you, I would highly recommend talking to your tax professional because they're going to know your situation better than we are. But it'll mainly depend on timing of your installation. All right, so I wanted to look at an example pricing table. This is for folks who can take the tax credit. So what I have is two different size systems. So this column is going to be a 5 kilowatt system. This is a slightly smaller system. And then here we have about an average size installation. This is a 10 kilowatt. So I'm going to focus on this column, but the two scale with each other based on size of system. So for the average, you know, pricing in Pennsylvania, we're looking at $265 a watt. So your sticker price is going to be $26,500 for a 10 kilowatt system. If you can take the tax credit, that is going to reduce the total cost by almost $8,000. And then you're looking at a net cost of about $18,000. And then every year you're going to save money on your electric costs. And that's, that bill that I showed you earlier, and kind of offsetting your usage from the grid with your solar production. So in that first year, you're expected to save about $2,300. And then that's just going to continue to accumulate with time. So even as your system is becoming less and less efficient over time, as utility rates increase, your solar actually becomes more valuable, because remember, your solar is of equal value to the retail rate of electricity from your utility. So by year 10, you will have saved almost $25,000. And then by the end of the lifetime of the system, you're looking at savings of nearly $70,000. And so there is this additional piece of income that you can get from your solar system. This is called a solar renewable energy credit, or SREC. And so these are basically credits for every 1,000 kilowatt hours that you generate and export to the grid. You will generate one credit, and the credits are bought and sold on a market. And right now, they're valued at about $30 per SREC. And since it is a market, it's hard to predict. We just kind of guess at the first 5 years, it'll be about $30 per SREC. And so you would expect to see about $1,800. And so that you can also see income from for the lifetime of your system. And so your net savings on this system, which originally cost you $26,500, is going to be on the order of $52,000. Now, without the tax credit, you're looking at still seeing net savings of almost twice what you initially spent on the system. But unfortunately, that upfront cost is going to be 30% higher because you don't have the tax credit anymore. Now, financing options may become more attractive to folks since the tax credit's gone. But so in terms of paying for your system, you do have options. The first is a cash option. This is kind of your highest upfront cost, but you get to maximize your savings. Number two would be loans. So there are national and local options, and solar installers themselves often offer financing. And then the way that we most frequently see people finance their system is through a home equity line of credit. And that, like I said, there are lots of options. So we just recommend that you kind of shop around and see what your options are. But I also wanted to mention that as a member of Switch Together, you would have access to loans from the Clean Energy Credit Union as well as Community First Credit Union. So just check out your options, maybe talk to your financial advisor and see what's right for you. I do have an example of financing. So in this case, we're looking at a home equity line of credit, and we have the same two systems that I showed before, so the 5 kilowatt and the 10 kilowatt. And here we're looking at an interest rate of about 7%, and in this instance, putting 20% down. And so if you look at this 10 kilowatt example, for a 10-year term, your your net monthly payment is going to end up being positive, meaning you're paying more on your loan than you're saving per month on your electric bill. But with the 15-year loan, you're actually, oh, this is bad math. You're actually saving $1 more per month than you're paying on the loan. And then overall, you will still see a net savings, but it is going to be reduced relative to the cash option, of course. Okay, and so then the final financing option that I wanted to mention is third-party ownership. So these would be leases and power purchase agreements. So these are one option among all of your other options. The benefits to a lease, in particular for residential systems, is that it is a low upfront cost. Sometimes you can do nothing down. However, it is going to be much lower savings, and you are not the owner of your system. It's a third party ownership, right? So you are just allowed to use the power from the system that lives on your home. And leases are the one area that like we are a little bit nervous about. It is the financing option that is the easiest to scam homeowners. So it's really important to read the terms of the agreement carefully. Reach out to us if you have questions about what something means. In general, we say that if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. And I want to be clear, like I am not saying anything. I have no idea if Green Rack Solar offers a lease. This is not about them. This is just when you hear about solar installers who are, door-to-door salespeople, they're often offering lease products that are on the sketchy side. So that's why I just kind of give this as a caveat. It can be a great option for some people, but it can also lead to issues down the road.
Monica, I would love to
Yeah.
chime in on that.
Yeah, please.
Because I spent eight of my 10 years in this industry basically doing consumer advocacy after being exposed to the seedy underbelly of solar leases. So I love that there was a call out in there. Leases, I I think I agree with, or I kind of heard a parallel sentiment to how I express my feelings about leases. They are not inherently bad or evil, but they are the means by which predatory salespeople in this industry have been able to take advantage of so many customers. And that's one of the things I love about Solar United Neighbors and Switch Together, that you guys are using this kind of community pulling together and collective purchasing, not only to get a good rate, but also to avoid that exploitation that is all too common in the industry. I just wanted to make a quick call out because Green Rack does have leasing products, power purchase agreements. They are a very small portion of what we sell because of that dynamic. That there, I think, is a smaller cross section of where they actually make sense for consumers versus making sense for a greedy salesperson. However, we are currently in the process of solidifying a pricing package with a solar cooperative that we're a member of called Amicus. And Amicus is basically, it is a cooperative group of solar installers and local regional solar installers that we do collective purchasing and we do partnerships and knowledge sharing, things like that. They have spun up a partnership with what I would call the premier lease provider in the industry, or one of the premier lease providers, Lightreach, Palmetto. If you've shopped around for solar, you may have been contacted by a salesperson singing the Palmetto song. This product, I will hold no this product has been used to take advantage of people. However, the Amicus pricing package, we are really optimistic and hopeful that, especially post ITC in 2026, it will be a really good option for folks that otherwise would be looking at financing or some other non-cash purchase option. And we do have the discounted pricing for 2026, which is really competitive pricing on a cash basis, really competitive. It's like scary. And my boss is mad at me for it. But for anybody that's looking for like a transfer from paying your utility bill to paying, a different monthly expense that's a little bit less, that's going to be a really good option. And it is levelized so smaller and lower yield systems we're able to offer much more competitive rates on those, whereas typically a lease product is like really more attainable on bigger systems and especially high yield systems. In this area, there's a lot of shading. So anyway, I'm rambling at this point, but we do have good options for that, for those that it makes sense for. So wanted to call that out, and it's kind of an emerging thing right now. So not something that any of us have like a really good snappy understanding of, but we are in the late stages of finalizing that. So if you are interested and you're talking to one of my colleagues or communicating with myself, just ask us about it and we can talk more in depth.
Yeah, no, thank you, Will. I felt bad as I was talking about it because I realized I made it sound like, oh, this is you. But I'm
No,
glad that
I
you're
have carried that burden for 10 years of
yeah.
work in solar. Oh, you're one of those guys. Not
Yeah.
really, but I know the sentiment. So
Yep. 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 Yeah. So all this to say that we are trying to make sure that solar continues to have a good name. We're not trying to, screw anyone over. So we just want to make sure that everybody has all the information that you need. And I think so much of that is just being honest and forthright about where the issues are. So I hope that over the course of this presentation, you have become interested in joining the Switch Together program. So if you are, and if you have not already joined, I have the website down at the bottom. It is switchtogether.com/Greater Pittsburgh. So this screenshot on the screen, this is what you'll open up to on that webpage. And if you're interested in registering, you'll hit this green button. And it'll guide you through a really nice form for figuring out if your home is suitable for solar and kind of some of the different components you might be interested in, whether that's financing or battery. Um, so you'll kind of go through the application, give your information, and that'll lead you to eventually to Will. So I did want to mention, so part of the program is um, joining is free. If you would like to receive a proposal, there is a $150 deposit that is refundable. If you decide you're not going to go solar, you will have the $150 refunded to you. And if you do decide to sign a contract, then it'll go towards the cost of the system. So I wanted to be clear that, joining, filling out the initial application, that is all free. It's if you want to take that next step, it is $150, but again, that is refundable. And then I just want to take an opportunity to ask folks to help us spread the word. So we want to make sure that as many people in the area are going solar as possible, or at least know about the program. So we do ask that if you're able to help us spread the word. So we have the opportunity to share this recording once we send it to you. You can share information about the program on social media. And I'm actually just going to launch a poll quickly to see if you are interested in helping us to grow the program. And if you are, then somebody from Sun will reach out to you and kind of help talk to you about different ways that you can share information about it. And if not, that's totally okay. So I think you should see the poll on your screen. So if you can, just go ahead and answer that question, and then I'll be able to move on. You're also welcome to check out our website down at the bottom. You can see it says solarunitedneighbors.org/volunteer. Just give it another second. All right. And then we're going to move on. So this is, again, the Switch Together website right here. And then this is an email that will go to our PA team. So it'll go to me, to Chris and Adrian, as well as Rachel. If you have any questions at all, any concerns, we're really here to help you. So please, please do reach out. And I'm going to see no questions. So thank you everybody so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. I know Tuesday evening, it's a lot of solar. And I want to thank Will and Adrian and Chris for joining me today. I really appreciate you all popping in. And Will, thanks so much for talking about Green Rack.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys.
All right. Hope everybody has a great night. Thank you so much. Bye.